Hello again. My name is Ethan. I'm pretty sure most of you have seen me before, at least once. Today we're going to be talking about professional communication, and this is honestly one of my favorite topics. And I could probably talk for like 8 hours straight about professional communication because it is really important. There's a lot to it, but hopefully in the next 20 or so minutes, I'm going to cover some of the like things you can be doing right now to set yourself up for success. I'm going to break this up into 4 sections. The first one's going to be audio calls. The later sections include video calls, email, and social media. But just know that pretty much everything that I'm sharing here is pretty good across the board, where the same kind of details that you would take into an audio call will obviously correspond to a video call where you're also speaking, or even an in-person interview, which I sort of left out here because of the sort of today's age. A lot of stuff is done virtually. But what I'm trying to, the point being is don't think of any of these like an isolated point. They're universal for all forms of professional communication. Without further ado, though, let's dive into audio and chatting and talking just like I'm doing now. Most important thing about audio-based communication, professionally speaking, is making sure that you're well understood. There are two key principles that I keep in mind, and that is enunciation as well as the speed at which you're talking. So in the current format, I have 30 minutes to tell you guys years of experience. So I'm talking a little bit faster, but I'm not talking too fast where you can't understand me. Similarly, if I was in an interview, I would probably even slow down just a little bit more so that the people on the other side of the call can understand me and won't miss anything that I'm saying. And if you're listening actively, you'd even notice that I slowed down how fast I'm speaking in the middle of that sentence. That kind of communication style is really important. When people get nervous when they're in interviews, they oftentimes talk really, really fast. And when they talk really, really fast, you start to miss things because they're talking so fast, they forget to say words, they forget to make sentences. Honestly, they start creating run-on sentences. And the people on the other side probably aren't understanding you all too well. So by forcing yourself to talk slowly when you're doing any sort of audio communication, it's going to be the most effective way to get yourself and your points across. I also touched on enunciation. This is a difficult thing for everyone since everyone comes from different backgrounds of maybe they don't speak English as their first language. But the one thing, if you struggle speaking English or you just struggle with great sentences and great word choice, the next best thing is just making sure that the words you are saying are coming across clearly. Because again, people on the other side, in order to hear you most effectively, they need to be able to hear all of those vowels and consonants in your words. And again, even if you're not speaking like in Shakespearean prose, it's okay as long as you're being clear. So moving on to video calls. My video is off right now, but in a different time, we can go into this in more examples. But with video calls, you should think of them as if you are in person. There is not much of a difference between being behind a webcam and then being in person. The only maybe key difference could be very subtle body languages, because as everyone knows, when you're having a conversation with someone and they're wrapping up their sentence, you can tell. And then you know sort of that you can start talking afterwards. Over a video, that can sometimes be lost because sometimes not all the details of someone's facial expression will come through, and so on and so forth. So besides the whole like communication flow over video calls, if you consider you're in an interview and you're doing a video call for an interview, just like you're doing an interview in person, you should dress to impress. Even if you can't have the perfect background, um, if you yourself are looking as best as possible, that does a lot for you in regards to professionalism. I said it just previously, dress to success. It's that funny joke of like dress for the job you want kind of thing, and then someone wearing a Batman costume. Obviously, you can dress in any costume you want because that's what you want to be. But in a professional setting, you should probably be wearing something of a professional nature, even if it's as simple as a golf t-shirt, which are those like couple buttons at the top. That goes a long way as compared to a messy t-shirt or a hoodie. um, I will also say that with in this video calls slide, one thing that I do, again, you can't see me right now, but I like to talk with my hands. That is just the way that I communicate. I do it when I give big presentations at conferences. I did it when I was in university and I was doing small presentations in front of my class. And I'm even doing it now where I'm trying to share some information with you folks. If that is your style of communicating by like using your hands and really getting into the presentation, the one thing I'll say is try not to make it too distracting. There are pros and cons to like talking like that and using your full body in your hands while you're talking. A lot of people have different opinions. One of the things that I have been told is that sometimes it can be distracting for other people. So if you're talking with your hands and you're moving your hands a lot and you're fidgeting while you're talking, that is okay. Oftentimes it comes from anxiety sort of thing where you get anxious about what you're talking about or the fact that you are talking in front of a more professional setting. And the one thing that I was always told is those like fidget toys or just anything, a pen, um, a chapstick, uh, when you're doing a bigger presentation, if you have like a clicker in your hand, if you hold something in one of your hands, it can really help you not be so distracting while you're talking. And before I move on to more of the text-based ones, there's one more point that I want to cover that I am still working on myself, and it is the infamous word. All the time. I've already done it multiple times during this presentation, even though I'm trying actively not to. And it's when you aren't sure exactly what you're going to say next, sometimes we just sort of go, or like, and we use those bridge words. And going back to a point that I made previously about talking slowly, that can help a ton with preventing you from using words like. Additionally, taking a break while you're presenting, taking 5 seconds between a sentence just to think about what you're going to say next is really effective. And just to sort of prove it, I'm actually going to stop talking randomly in the next couple of minutes for 5 seconds, and I'm going to see just how obvious it is for you all to sort of pick up the break that I take before my next sentence in order to prevent myself from using the contraction, because a lot of professional speakers really do not like that. It's not like they're going to take points away from you, so to speak, during an interview. But again, trying to hit that like as professional as possible mark is always better than not. So moving on to the emails. Emails is going to be the number one communication style that you're going to use as a professional. When you are in high school and university, you'll be using email a lot to communicate with professors and to be communicating with potential job opportunities. you'll probably less likely use it to communicate with other people in regards to, or your peers. I at least found that I was using my text messages more than I was using email when I was in college. But of course, that was my experience. It can be different for you. The key to emails is keep it short, keep it simple, and keep it direct. The fluffier an email is, the more times people will not read it entirely or not answer it entirely. Personally, one of the most frustrating things for me is when I send an email to someone with multiple questions and they only answer the first one. And then I have to sit there and think, are they just not answering my other two questions? Do they want me to ask it again? Did they just not read them? And to be honest, most people just read that first question and then reply to it because that's the way humans think. We read something, we see a question, we think of an answer, and before we lose that answer, we want to write it down. And for some folks, that flow also involves just replying to the email directly. I'll say, since a lot of you here are just like me, you're young and you've grown up with technology, I have no doubt that you'll be able to read an entire email and answer all of the questions before replying. But it's just worth saying that with email communications, the longer your email is, the harder it'll be sometimes to get the answer you're expecting. Furthermore, making sure that you have a good introduction like hello or um, something along the lines of another basic greeting. And then also making sure you have a good ending where it's like, thank you, or best, or kindest regards. Whatever you choose, it's probably fine. People, I've heard different things where they're like, oh, don't use best because some people don't think that's rude or think that's sending. And honestly, everyone has opinions on that kind of stuff, but never once have I ever like quote unquote gotten in trouble or like have said the wrong thing in an email by just sticking to the basics. Hello, so and so, or thank you, my name Ethan, or best Ethan are all just really great ways that I have found in success for using email. And then one last point, in the resumes, I talked about action words and active voice. When you're writing an email, sometimes that single email will be your opportunity to make an impression on someone else, especially in the context of a job opportunity. By focusing on your word choice and your active voice in those emails, they will come across much stronger than other folks' communications will. And that will do you more good than probably anything else. When you're talking, active voice is a little bit less important because, excuse me, when you're talking, active voice is a little bit less important because you're communicating. It's different. When you're writing, however, people may reread your email multiple times. It might be shared to multiple other individuals. So making sure that what you've written is your best sort of communication is important. So if you don't know what active voice is, I would take some time to look that up and make sure you have that down. That has been my favorite sort of English tool for being confident in my own writing. And to be honest with y'all, when I was in high school, I started out at like a D writing level. I was getting D's on my English papers. I was not doing well in my history classes. And by the end of high school, I was getting B pluses. And the one thing that I used to like level myself up and level my writing skills up was active voice. I learned good word choice. I built better vocabulary, and I focused on making sure that every sentence that I wrote was an active voice. And that helped so significantly. to the point where that is why I'm sort of harping on it right now. And again, everyone's going to have different opinions and different tools or things that they have found successful for them, but that was what I found most successful. Lastly, moving on to social media, believe everyone here actually already listened to me talk about social media before. So I'm just going to reiterate a little bit here, and then I have ample time for questions. So with professional social media, keep in mind that everything you do on the internet is searchable. Google and Microsoft index everything. From your Facebook posts to your Twitter tweets to your Instagram pictures, LinkedIn, Pinstagram. You can clearly tell I really know my social media here. Pinterest and all of the other social medias, people will be able to find you if you're using your real name and such. And with that said, everything you put out there, you are responsible for, whether or not it was a mistake or otherwise. Always think twice about posting. Always make sure that what you're posting is a representation of you. Of course, we as humans, we make mistakes, we grow up, we learn new things, we mature. So if you say something now and in 5 years you realize that that wasn't something that it was okay to say, or you realize right now that something you said 5 years ago on social media wasn't okay, that in itself is very okay. There's a reason why there's a delete button on so many of these things nowadays. Just remove it. And if someone does say something to you about something that you've said, go ahead and just say, thank you for letting me know. I'll make sure to remove it now. And it's as simple as that. By being honest with each other and saying, okay, this post might be taken out of context in a professional setting. Maybe you might want to reconsider having it on your timeline. That's very important, and you should look out for each other in that way, and also look out for yourself. Again, and if you want to post things sort of willy-nilly and not really care too much about it, then my recommendation for you is to have a private profile or have a anonymous profile where you can then sort of use social media a little bit more freely and not worry about the professional side of it. Because the one thing I want to drive home here is anything you put on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on anything, if it's public, someone in a professional setting can find it, and that is a professional representation of you. And thus, if you don't want it to be the professional representation of yourself, you shouldn't put it out there. And you should put it somewhere else, privately or in a more anonymous profile. And I'm gonna sort of end the social media bit there because we did talk about that deeply prior. And now I'm gonna open things up to questions. And I'm also think I'll stop sharing so I can open up the Zoom chat because I think I'm getting some messages there.
You didn't miss much in the Zoom chat. People were just sharing their own experiences, and also Eleanor shared a great example of active versus passive voice. So thank you for that, Eleanor. Does anyone have any questions for Ethan? You can share them in the chat, or you can just shout them out right now.
Yeah, I think my only comment would just be like, the rules are not super different, but just doing all this stuff via video chat and by phone, all the things that Ethan just said. I feel like I'm giving a perfect example of like how not to do this, and like blur, blur, blur. All the things Ethan just said about clarity and slowing down and trying to eliminate likes and ums from your speech count double. And actually allowing a little space is good to do intentionally, not just to get your thoughts together, but to let the other person get their thoughts together. It can be really nice when you're listening to someone talk and talk and talk to have them just stop for a second and you can digest what they've said.
100%. And another thing is that style of communicating slowly and effectively and taking time in between sentences is not 100% natural. It takes practice. I'll share like a personal experience. When I was at Wentworth, for every year that I was at Wentworth, I attended more than probably maybe in total 20 or so leadership and public speaking sessions where I practiced the style of communication that I'm sort of sharing for you all in 30 minutes. So the most important bit here is practicing. Do it when you're talking during your class times. Do it in your next presentation. And if you need more practice, when you're similarly how you might seek interview practice, sometimes just seeking public speaking practice is just as effective, where maybe you set the goal for a 15-minute Zoom session and your goal is to your other person, I'm going to speak to you and I need you to tell me every time I use the word or like out of place. And then you should have a conversation. Make it about a subject you're passionate about. For me, I could probably talk for hours about programming. So I will say in 15 minutes, I'm going to tell you about this topic in programming. And then I'm going to just talk for 15 minutes and someone else needs to listen to me and count how many times I use those words, or like. And at the end of the 15 minutes, I want to know how many times I used it. And then I'm going to use that as my metric. And I'm going to say, okay, tomorrow, let's do this again. Let's talk for 15 more minutes. We can use the same topic or we can use a different topic. And I need you to count how many times I use the words or like. And this will work great if you pair off, have, you and a partner, you can each take turns. One person goes first, the other person goes second. Then the next day or the next week, you go again. And you keep a running tally of how many times you use those words. And eventually, as you pay more attention to it, you'll start to notice that you only slip up once or twice within those 15 minutes. And then you will find that rhythm that works for you. And you can take that into your professional interviews and professional presentations.
Yeah, and also if you if you can't or don't want to do it, it is very helpful to run conversations like that or mock interviews with other people. But it is also helpful just to practice on your own and to record it and then listen back. I know everyone hates the sound of their own voice, but it is really helpful for kind of, I don't know, hearing things that you don't hear while you're saying them.
Wonderful. Well, if anyone has any questions at any time, again, feel free to reach out. I'm in the Discord, and you're welcome to message me. I'm always happy to share these tips again. And if you just want like a refresh, I know I don't actually include a lot of words in my presentations. Sorry about that. It's sort of a force of habit. You see, I'm currently speaking off the top of my head, and I'm throwing in too many ums and uhs. Now it's going to be, everyone's going to be thinking about it. Anyways, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to put these things into writing so that you can reference back to it. And of course, maybe at a later session, if anyone ever needed to practice, I think that was a great idea about recording yourself. That way you can do it on your own time. You don't have to be with anyone else when you do it. All of those ideas are fantastic. So yeah, I think that's all I have for everyone today.